She can't breathe. The January cold is everywhere in the frozen air, in the ice-rimmed water filling her lungs. A roar fills her ears as the world turns black again. The screams aren't hers. They belong to the crowd of 50 villagers in Kingston upon Thames, England. Their breath fogging in the winter morning of January 12, 1633, cheering as Alice Turner drowns. Dragged upward by a creaking beam, she gasps just once before they plunge her right back under the freezing Thames tributary. This isn't an execution ordered by a king. This isn't justice defined by law. This is entertainment. A punishment for a crime so vague it could be applied to anyone. Speaking too loudly. Disagreeing with a man. Talking back to authority. Gossiping too much. Being a woman who would not stay silent. The contraption used to break her will is simple, a chair bolted to a long wooden pole. The structure hangs over water thick with winter mud, deep enough to drown someone if the chair doesn't rise again, cold enough to stop a heart in minutes through hypothermic shock. The villagers laugh as the operator pushes the pole downward in the January morning. Wood groans under the weight. Alice vanishes beneath the dark surface. Seconds pass. Her lungs burn from cold shock as much as lack of oxygen. She claws desperately at the restraints, cutting into her wrists. The men holding the beam smirk. They wait. They wait until her struggling slows. Then they bring her back up, only to do it again in the freezing winter air. This is the ducking stool, a punishment designed not just to hurt, but to humiliate, to break the spirit of women who dared to speak. And winter made it deadlier. January water at 4 degrees Celsius triggers mammalian diving reflex immediately. Heart rate drops. Blood vessels constrict. Victims lose consciousness in under 3 minutes. Some survived. Many did not. Bodies sank into the sludge below, preserved by winter cold, never to rise again. And every death was met with applause from crowds desperate for distraction during the brutal winter months. Tonight we descend into a history that society tried to wash away, because the darkest horrors are always the ones we inflicted on our own neighbors. To understand why the ducking stool existed, we must step into a world obsessed with silence. Not peaceful silence, controlled silence. Enforced silence. Medieval Europe and later colonial America lived under rigid order. Men commanded. Women obeyed. But occasionally, a woman spoke too boldly. She questioned a decision, insulted a neighbor, refused to let accusations go unanswered. She earned a title, scold. The crime of being a scold wasn't about truth. It wasn't even about harm. It was about defiance. A scold was a woman who disrupted social harmony by talking. Churches preached discipline. Civil courts upheld it. Communities enforced it during the long winter months when everyone was trapped together in close quarters. When irritation festered, when a woman's voice seemed louder in the frozen silence, the ducking stool became the ultimate warning. Don't challenge your husband. Don't question authority. Don't let your voice rise above a whisper. Historians describe these punishments as deterrents, but the records tell a colder story. Women were not dunked to fix behavior. They were dunked to prove a point. Every splash reminded others what happened when the powerless resisted. Trials for scolding required no evidence, no victim, no injury. All it took was a few complaints. Her tongue is too sharp. She insults honest men. She spreads rumors. Even worse, some were punished simply because men felt embarrassed. A wife who argued in public could make a husband seem weak, and weakness was intolerable. The ducking stool became the crowd's favorite answer to female disobedience. Public squares, markets, bridges, frozen lakes, wherever the stool could be mounted. People gathered during winter months when agricultural work stopped and public spectacle became primary entertainment. Mothers, sisters, daughters all forced to watch in the January cold. To learn the rule written nowhere but understood everywhere: your voice is not your own. Your body is not your own. Your survival depends on silence. Over centuries, thousands suffered. Some barely survived the freezing plunge. Hypothermia could kill even after rescue. Others drowned when the mechanism jammed in river ice. Their deaths were recorded not as tragedies, but as inevitabilities. Because in a world ruled by fragile egos, a drowning woman was preferable to a defiant one during those brutal winter months when control seemed most necessary. At first glance, the ducking stool looked like a tool for construction, a timber beam, iron bolts. A humble chair, but every inch of its design served one purpose: total domination. The beam, long enough to stretch from frozen riverbank to deep water, was mounted on a pivot. This gave operators leverage. One push downward, and the victim plunged. One pull upward, and she surfaced only to face another drop in the ice-cold water. The chair itself was crude, often splintered wood bound by metal. It had no cushioning, no comfort, just flat. Cold restraints that tightened with every movement. Leather straps locked across the wrists, across the ankles, across the chest. There would be no escape. Not even enough freedom to swim for survival in the freezing January water. The public watched as officials examined the setup in the winter morning. They checked the bolts, the rope, the water's depth breaking through surface ice if necessary. Not out of concern for the woman's life, but to ensure the punishment would last as long as possible before hypothermia killed her. The operator controlled everything: how long she stayed above water, how quickly she dropped, how deep she went. And winter water itself became the deadliest weapon. Cold at 4 degrees Celsius filled the lungs with shock. The body panicked, desperate to breathe. But the moment she surfaced for air in the frozen January morning, she was shoved back down. The chair hammered her spine against wood with every plunge. Mud swallowed her legs. Her hair tangled, wrapping around her face like a death mask. Some stools were fitted with wheels so they could parade the woman through the town first, a rolling stage for mockery through frozen streets. Children threw rotten vegetables. Men hurled insults louder than the splash. And then one final humiliation, the moment she was lowered over the winter water. All eyes locked on her terror. Because the ducking stool wasn't only torture, it was theater. A public spectacle fueled by cruelty disguised as righteousness during the long winter months when communities needed distraction. In theory, the goal was to cool the tongue of argumentative women. In practice, it was a coin toss between agony and execution. If the chair dipped too deep in the January water, the victim wouldn't return. Cold shock could stop the heart within 2 minutes. If it slammed into underwater debris or river ice, bones snapped, skulls cracked. If the mud trapped it, the operators called it God's decision. The woman ceased struggling. The winter water went still, and the crowd went home. But the stool remained, waiting for the next lesson, a silent machine of oppression, simple enough for any community to build, and deadly enough to silence countless voices. Her name was Alice Turner, a wife, a mother, a woman who refused to bow her head. The year was 1,633 inches. Kingston upon Thames,